April 2007, an 18-year-old Yazidi girl, Dua Khalil Aswad, was stoned to death in full view of the public in the town of Bashika near Mosul. This horrible scene was filmed by several bystanders on their mobile phones. According to some sources, those who carried out the stoning were family members who wanted to punish her for having left her home to go and live with a Muslim boy with whom she was in love. But as was the case with the Sinjar incident, this violent act also involved extremist groups whose aim was to destabilize Kurdish communities by projecting a negative image of Yazidis as people who kill their own children and believe that religion offers them a justification. But the Yazidis found it impossible to defend themselves against manipulation on such a large scale.
At the moment, people are at work to make the Yazidis look bad. There has been a terrible thing, a stoning of a young girl in April, under circumstances that are so unusual for the Yazidi community that one must conclude that this was set up by, it was done by Yazidis, but the Yazidis were told to do it. It was done by a number of people who were known to have connections with groups that were not favourable to a separate Kurdish entity in Iraq. This was not Yazidis. They did it as members of a pro-Saddam party, as a pro-Al-Qaeda party. So politics play an enormous role, but the problem is that we see that the minorities in Kurdistan, in Iraqi Kurdistan, are now being targeted, and that it looks as though this were a natural development. It's not natural, it's organised. I'm almost certain, and I think the world should take that into account. The Yazidis are as shocked by what happened to this girl as anybody else. They can't explain it. It's horrible, but it was very, very, very rare that this was ever done, and never in public, never. This is unthinkable. There's never been, I mean, that's the whole point of honour, that it's all done very far away and nobody talks about it. It's totally impossible, but people haven't picked up on that.
We're very sad and that this happened. This is very, very, very bad thing, but it doesn't, it is not linked with the Yazidi tradition. No.
These tragic events transformed harmony in the communities into deep mistrust. Despite some friendly relations, tensions are now running high between Muslims and Yazidis. Clearly, if it's not nurtured, friendship can suffer and become vulnerable. The Kurdish authorities have understood that learning about tolerance must start at an early age. Therefore, young children are taught the virtues of coexistence and how different religious communities live to arrive at a proper understanding. But some wounds are difficult to heal, and tensions continue nevertheless. The principal of this school wants to see young Yazidi and Muslim girls sit next to one another in class. She's trying to change attitudes and get women more involved in the changes.
قبل أحداث الشيخان لا أنت ما كنت تشوف إلا مثلا المسيحية اليزيدية والمسلمة يتخطون سوا يعني محبتهم زايدة يعني ما كان أكو شيء بالهم لكن بعد الأحداث مع يعني إحنا حكينا وياهم حتى نمشي يعني مثل ما يقولون يمشي المركب بس ما تشوف مثلا صداقة قوية بيناتهم هسه بالمدرسة توصل أي مرحلة هاجر أي واحد من أفراد أسرته إلى أوروبا نشوف هي همينة بطلت لأن أنا مصيري أوروبا يعني إيش راح أسوي هنا إيش أكمل وخاصة الأحداث اللي صارت بالموصل يعني بذبح اليزيدية يعني طلابنا من الجامعة اللي بطلوا صار عندهم حالة من الاكتئاب والحالة النفسية لأن ما كانوا يعرفون مصيرهم شنو راح يمتحنون ولا ما راح يمتحنون من الطالبات ومن البنات اللي كانوا بالموصل بطلوا تركوا الدراسة من بداية السنة وراء الأحداث اللي صارت تخطف بالموصل البنات فهذا الشيء ده يأثر عليهم ده يحاول بس يخلصون السادس يقعدون بالبيت أو مثلا اللي هي بالثالث تخلص الثالث تقعد بالبيت بس مجرد تاخذ شهادة البكالوريا وتقعد.
Many Yazidi girls have fled westward, together with other family members, towards Dohuk and Shekan. Among this Yazidi family's elders, there's an important religious dignitary from Mosul. Before fleeing from Mosul, the girls attended the local university, had Muslim friends and lived perfectly ordinary lives. But the recent and vicious attacks against members of their community has brought important changes in their lives.
قلنا ما قو إيرو ورقة وزع عندنا لازم دركفن دركت ما تشتكي شخورة درناني أبد غرادي ما مان مال أخو ما هيلاو ما داري أخو قرتنو.
The eldest of Samira's daughters had finished university before leaving Mosul. Today, she's busy as a social worker in a private association established by an American, with the aim of promoting dialogue, understanding and friendship between the various religious communities in Kurdistan. She goes home every day after work to discuss the future with her family, a future in which Yazidis would live in peace again and where their rich historical past would be recognized and preserved. Yazidis still carry the stigma of past political and social repression, but they're not the only ones. Among the Kurdish populations, many Yazidis fled from Turkey and Iraq because of the violence they were subjected to. But other, poorer Kurds have taken over what used to be places of torture for political dissidents under Saddam Hussein. This former prison now houses Kurdish Muslims who were also forced to flee and abandon their homes and lands. Living conditions are precarious, and reminders of past suffering in this place are present everywhere.
هذا بقى العبا وأنا بينا بحركة بياخدون وبحركة هشت عيل داستنا دوبون وعزبتنا بون ويري رومنا درينا يدوني هشت عيل عاجي هوتين دخو عماليكا مقدين ودرسونا منه هاي دخو عماليكا جو فريكة قلت بيجنا دايكم رمضان أستنى ناشي من رما خوشي بلو دايكم بتانك من ما عندي أزوتي ما هذا هشتو رجو ستالي رمضان أزو فيرا أنا شمتهل مو بيتم
Despite the painful memories of recent events, Yazidis try to get on with life as before and as best they can. Weddings are very important ceremonies in the communities. A wedding symbolises a new alliance and a union that will serve to perpetrate and consolidate the community in the future generations. The whole village is invited to participate in the celebrations that not only bring joy and happiness, but also help to forget, even for a moment, the difficulties of daily life. Traditional music, dance and mime go a long way in the preservation of the cultural heritage of the Yazidi community. These scenes represent the rural life and toil of Yazidis throughout the ages. This family is preparing to go on the yearly pilgrimage to the Holy Temple at Lalish. They will spend one day and one night there. Yazidi feast days follow the Mithraic calendar. There are 6 major religious feasts, as well as traditional events that vary according to regions. Feasts are officiated by religious dignitaries, and the various rites symbolize submission to God and his angels through the adoration of fire, water, the sun and the moon. It's out of respect for the sanctity of this place that worshippers take off their shoes and continue barefoot on their mystical quest. They want to remain as humble and unassuming as possible throughout. At the heart of the Lalish complex is the Holy Temple, where Yazidis perform their most important mystical rituals.
هذا يعني نجيب اسم أي يزيدي وين ما كان على هنا في هالماي، وهذا بئر مال عزرائيل، يعني حتى إذا واحد تطعم ما بيطعم دم، يقول لنا يعني عزرائيل كان يغسل السكينة مات في هالماي. هاي كل واحد يجي هنا، يعني هاي عقد مسدودة مع الناس. واحد يفتح، أنا أفتح عقدة مال واحد الآخر يجي يعني يفتح عقدة مالتي، يعني هيك هذا رمز مالته، يعني عقدة لا سمح الله صاير عندهم شيء مشكلة من يعني بهاي الفتحة كل واحد يفتح عقدة الآخر.
It is here that young Yazidis learn the rituals and prayers that have been handed down from generation to generation. These acts contain themselves the keys to the mysteries and the history of this temple.
هذا قبر شيخ أبو بكر، هاللون الأسود هاي القطعة يصنعوها من الصوف، مصنوعة لازم تكون من الصوف، والغزل يغزلوه كالصوف يسووه غزل، ولازم الغزل يكون بيت بنات باكرات. بعدين يجيبون الورق مال الجوز يسموه زرقوز. هالشجرة اللي ما تنطي ثمار، يكون يجيبون هالأوراق مال الشجرة ويا المي، يخلون هالقطعة قماش يخلون بالمي ينقعوه يصير لونه أسود داكن، يسموه خرقة. لباس يلبسوه مجموعة من رجال الدين اليزيدية، له مكانة مقدسة عند اليزيدية. يوصل الرجل الديني إلى مرحلة يلبسوه من هذا القماش يسموه خرقة.
While the family members are performing their last sacred rites, the guardian of the temple hurries through a network of narrow corridors. Before nightfall, he must light all the oil lamps that are scattered throughout the temple. He finally shuts the main door for the night. The faithful must now pray, facing the moon. In Europe and elsewhere, the Yazidi faith is largely unknown, and it's felt that the international community didn't take enough notice of the massacre perpetrated against Kurdish Yazidis in 2007. They obtained very little aid, and not enough funds were provided to allow them to rebuild their lives. The 35,000-strong Yazidi community in Germany was particularly shocked at the pictures and video footage of the Sinjar massacre.
The community is very, very hurt in their deep in their heart, because it was the first time that Yazidi can say on TV what's happened when aggression, when Yazidis were attacked by fanatic terrorists.
Das Ganze ging mir anfangs, wenn ich ehrlich bin, es gab ja vorher schon mal eine Attacke auf Jesiden, da ging es mir noch nicht so nah, bis jetzt dieser zweite Anschlag kam und ich dann tatsächlich gemerkt habe, die sind wirklich, sie verfolgen wirklich ganz gezielt Jesiden, also Menschen genauso wie ich. Genau die gleichen Grundsätze vertreten wie ich und die genauso leben wie ich und sie werden umgebracht, nur weil sie so sind wie ich.
There was a lot of attacked and a lot of people died for their religion. But this was the first time that about television you see what's the dimension it is when Yezidi are attacked.
This young Yazidi woman has made it her mission to make the Yazidi cause a priority at the European Parliament. She was born in Germany of Yazidi parents who emigrated there due to persecution at home. She was elected at the age of 20, which makes her one of the youngest members of the European Parliament. Her aim is to bring about the official recognition of religious minorities in Turkey and the Middle East. Being a Yazidi herself has certainly reinforced her conviction that Europe must consider the urgency of the situation and the humanitarian aid that Iraqi Yazidis need.
Die Europäische Union wird nicht die Gesichter der Kinder sehen, die in Sinjar bei der Bombenexplosion zum Beispiel beide Elternteile verloren haben. Das werden sie nicht machen. Die werden sie nicht sehen. Aber ich habe es gesehen, weil ich da war. Sie haben es gesehen, weil sie da waren. Aber die Hoffnung, die Jesiden, die ist da, dass sie irgendwann mal in Frieden gemeinsam in ihrer Gemeinschaft leben können.
At the beginning of the 18th century, Yazidis numbered more than 1 million. But today, there are only about 600,000 Yazidis in Iraq, 90% of whom live in the Kurdish-controlled northern part of the country.
Die Regierungen müssen die Jesiden als eine eigenständige Religion anerkennen. Wenn die Regierung das anerkannt hat und in offiziellen allen Dokumenten die Jesiden als Jesiden-Religionsgemeinschaft benannt werden, dann wird es in der Gesellschaft, ob es in Irak ist oder in der Türkei oder in Syrien oder in Europa, dadurch werden die Mitbürger der anderen Religionszugehörigkeiten ganz anders mit der Frage der Jesiden umgehen.
Yezidism is one of the most unusual religions on earth. It survived despite its status as an unrecognized religion under Islamic rule and through many onslaughts against its Kurdish followers. Yezidism is an enigma that has confounded scholars and provoked debate for some time. Tantalizing clues point in every direction. Rituals involving fire and prayers recited in the direction of the sun are distinctly Zoroastrian. Taboos against eating lettuce and beans, baptisms and the belief that Christ is a prophet hint at Manichaeism. Temple decorations in Lalish are distinctly Mithraic.
It would help if it were more generally accepted. The Yazidis represent an ancient element, a traditional, really Kurdish aspect of culture and of history. And that they're not alone, they have a direct link to other groups like the Ahl Haq. They are a reason for Kurds to be proud of being Kurds. This is an ancient religion that has adapted time and time again, is adapting now in the diaspora. So they deserve help from the authorities. They're getting help from the authorities. But it would be good if people in the West, in Europe and in America also, understood that this is not a bunch of people who kill their own children or anything. It's important for people to understand that this is perfectly normal people who do not worship evil. They worship in a very traditional way. They recognize that God is beyond their understanding, but they try to understand something of the thing, the essential elements behind nature, behind society. And they've always done this. They're at a crossroads. They have to modernize. They are modernizing. But the one thing you can't say of Yazidis is that they've ever worshipped anything evil. They have not done anything evil. They are quite nice people, just like anybody else.
After 4,000 years of a history both rich and tragic, Yazidis still bear the scars of countless traumas and the grief that has accompanied them throughout the years. Despite their suffering and the fear, Yazidis continue to pray each day in the direction of the sun, to let the water flow between their fingers, and to hope that other religious communities will one day accept them and respect their beliefs. The task of scholars today will probably revolve around finding the right words to precisely describe their mystical faith. And to observe more closely and try to deepen our understanding of these children of the sun, who again and again come to the tomb of Sheikh Adi to tie and untie the knots of hope that might one day lead them to a real and more peaceful world.